AITA for missing my sister's wedding after she took my husband away, even though now my parents are furious with me. I wasn't at my sister Caroline's wedding last weekend. My absence wasn't because I was sick or had other plans. I chose not to go. But now my family is calling me petty, vindictive, and immature. My parents have labeled me the black sheep, accusing me of tearing the family apart because I couldn't set aside my feelings for one day. The reason? Caroline married my ex-husband, James. That wasn't the only twist. Caroline and James didn't meet after our divorce. Their relationship blossomed during my marriage. Yes, the man I once promised forever to and the sister I shared childhood secrets with betrayed me together. Yet here I am, the villain, because I couldn't play the role of the supportive sister and clap while they exchanged vows. My parents, meanwhile, are livid. "You've embarrassed the family," they said during the call where I was berated for being absent. Their words sliced through me like a blade, further isolating me from the people who were supposed to love and protect me. But Reddit, am I really the villain here? Let me take you back a few years to explain why I made this decision. I met James in college. He was charming, smart, and had this quiet confidence that drew me in. We were together for 6 years before getting married. Our life wasn't perfect, but I thought we were solid. At least, until the cracks started to show. IT began subtly, James working late more often, distant phone calls, and moments when he seemed completely checked out of our life together. I chalked it up to stress, or maybe my own insecurities. But then I noticed how close he'd become to my sister, Caroline. At first, I thought it was sweet. She was younger, bubbly, and had this knack for making people laugh. She brought a lightness to every room she entered, but things shifted. Caroline would come by the house more often, and they'd share these private jokes that excluded me. James lit up around her in a way he hadn't with me in months. Still, I told myself I was imagining things. Paranoia is a hell of a drug, right? The truth came out one night when James left his phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. I wasn't the type to snoop, but something in my gut told me to look. And there it was, a string of texts between him and Caroline. Flirty, intimate, and unmistakably damning. The worst part wasn't just the betrayal, it was realizing they'd been carrying on an affair for nearly a year. I confronted James, and his response gutted me. He admitted it, but not with the remorse I'd hoped for. "We didn't mean for this to happen," he said, like that made it better. He said he'd fallen out of love with me and couldn't help how he felt about Caroline. Caroline, for her part, didn't even try to deny it. "You two were never really right for each other," she told me, as if that justified everything. She looked at me with this patronizing pity, like I should thank her for pointing out the flaws in my marriage. My parents? They called it unfortunate, but said, "Love happens where it happens." I felt like I was losing my mind. While I was drowning in heartbreak, they were busy planning the next chapter of their love story. Fast forward to last weekend, the day of the wedding. I'd spent weeks agonizing over the decision. Should I go? Should I smile through the pain and let Caroline and James have their perfect day? My parents made their stance clear. "If you don't show up, people will talk," my mom said, her voice sharp over the phone. "Family is family, and we need to support each other." Support each other. That line kept ringing in my ears as I sat alone in my tiny apartment, staring at the invitation on the coffee table. Where was this supposed family support when my marriage was falling apart? When my sister and my husband were sneaking around behind my back, the morning of the wedding, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest, but I also felt clarity for the first time in months. I didn't owe anyone my presence at that ceremony. Going would have been an act of betrayal against myself, a betrayal I wasn't willing to commit. I stayed home. The calls started coming in almost immediately. First my mom, then my dad, and even a couple of relatives chimed in. I let them all go to voicemail. I couldn't face them, not while they acted like my absence was the real crime in the situation. Later that evening, I got a text from my mom. "Caroline is devastated. You've ruined her special day." Ruined her day? The irony wasn't lost on me. The fallout wasn't just immediate, it felt calculated. My parents didn't waste a second before launching into their campaign against me. "You could have just shown up, smiled, and left," my mom snapped during one of her many phone calls. "Why does everything have to be about you?" I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of that statement. About me? I was the one who had been left behind, betrayed by the two people I thought I could count on the most. And now, somehow, I was the selfish one for not smiling through their fairy tale ending. My dad tried a different approach, one that hit deeper. "You're going to regret this, you know," he said in that cold, measured voice he used when he wanted to make me feel small. Family is all you have at the end of the day. Family. The word left a bitter taste in my mouth. What kind of family tells you to forgive the unforgivable? What kind of family pretends betrayal is just a minor inconvenience? Even my extended family got involved, sending texts and leaving passive-aggressive comments on my social media. My cousin Rachel, who I thought understood what I'd been through, sent me a message that felt like a gut punch. At the end of the day, blood is thicker than water. You'll regret pushing everyone away. But the worst moment came during another phone call with my mom. I had finally decided to confront her, to explain why I couldn't bring myself to attend. I poured my heart out, describing the pain, the sleepless nights, and the therapy sessions I had to endure just to piece myself back together. Her response? "You've always been so dramatic. No wonder James left you." I hung up the phone, my hands trembling with a mix of rage and grief. That comment stayed with me, replaying in my head over and over again. It wasn't just hurtful, it was a confirmation that, to them, my pain had never mattered. Sitting alone in my apartment that night, I couldn't help but wonder if they were right. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I should have gone to the wedding, if only to keep the peace. But then I thought about Caroline's smug smile and James's unrepentant confession, and the guilt morphed into something else, defiance. I wasn't wrong for protecting myself. I wasn't wrong for saying no. The days after the wedding were a whirlwind of accusations and isolation. My phone buzzed constantly, texts from my parents, calls I couldn't bring myself to answer, and even a few cryptic messages from Caroline herself. One read, "You've always been good at making things about you. Thanks for proving it again." That one hurt. Deep down, I think I'd always hoped Caroline might one day apologize, or at least acknowledge the devastation she caused. But instead of an apology, I got thinly veiled contempt wrapped in self-righteousness. I thought about replying, but what could I say? That she had stolen my husband? That her wedding was the final nail in the coffin of our relationship? She already knew. And worse, she didn't care to. My parents, however, wouldn't let up. My mom's calls escalated from angry rants to guilt-laden monologues about how I was ruining the family. "Do you know how hard this has been for me?" she asked in one voicemail, her voice trembling with emotion. "You've put me in an impossible position." Her? She was in an impossible position? I nearly threw my phone across the room when I heard that one. But it wasn't just my parents or Caroline, it was everyone. My aunts and uncles, who had once been distant but cordial, now openly criticized me. "It's one day," one aunt said in a message that practically oozed condescension. "Sometimes you have to sacrifice for the greater good." The greater good. That phrase stuck with me for days. Did these people even hear themselves? They weren't asking me to sacrifice a little time or money. They were asking me to sacrifice my dignity, to stand in a room and applaud two people who had shattered my life. The only person who truly seemed to understand was my friend Lily. She showed up unannounced at my apartment a couple of days after the wedding, holding a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "I figured you could use some company," she said, setting everything down on the coffee table. As we talked, I told her everything. The pressure from my parents, the guilt gnawing at me, and the overwhelming sense of betrayal that I just couldn't shake. "You're not crazy," she said firmly, pouring me another glass. "What they're asking of you isn't fair. It's manipulative and it's cruel. You have every right to draw the line." Hearing those words felt like a lifeline. For the first time in days, I didn't feel like I was losing my mind. I wasn't the villain they were making me out to be. I was just someone trying to survive. After Lily left, I found myself replaying everything she'd said. Maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe I wasn't being unreasonable. But the doubt lingered like a shadow, fed by the relentless judgment of my family. It wasn't just the wedding, it was the years of being sidelined and ignored. The way my parents excused Caroline's betrayal as if it were a harmless mistake. The way they treated my pain as a footnote in a story that revolved around her. I decided to confront them one last time, hoping I could make them see my side. I called my mom and asked if we could talk. "What's there to talk about?" she said, her voice clipped. "You made your choice. I want you to understand why I didn't go," I said, keeping my tone calm even though my chest felt tight. It wasn't about hurting Caroline, it was about protecting myself. "Protecting yourself from what?" she shot back. From your own sister? She didn't mean to hurt you, and James wasn't happy with you. These things happen. There it was, the excuse that had haunted me for years. These things happen. As if betrayal was as natural as the weather. You're asking me to celebrate the people who broke me, I said, my voice shaking. Can you even imagine what that feels like? You're still hung up on this? She asked, exasperated. It's been years, and they're happy now. Why can't you let them be happy? Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I realized then that she wasn't ever going to see my side. To her, this wasn't about my pain, it was about maintaining the illusion of a perfect family. I can't do this anymore, I said quietly. If you can't respect my feelings, then maybe it's better if we take a break from each other. There was a long pause before she finally spoke. You're being selfish. I hung up. That night, I blocked my parents' numbers. It wasn't an easy decision, but it felt like the only way to breathe again. The guilt still clawed at me, but I reminded myself of something Lily had said. You don't owe them your forgiveness, especially if they aren't willing to earn it. It's been a week since the wedding, and my world still feels upside down. Blocking my parents should have brought me some peace, but instead, it's left me with a gnawing mix of guilt and anger. Did I go too far? Was I too harsh? Or have I finally done the right thing by standing up for myself? Caroline and James are probably off on their honeymoon, blissfully unaware of the storm they've left in their wake. Meanwhile, my family seems more focused on my absence than the vows they exchanged. The way they see it, I was the one who ruined the day, not the bride and groom, not their history of betrayal, but me. A part of me wants to believe they'll come around, that they'll finally understand why I couldn't be there. But another part of me knows better. My family has always chosen Caroline, always found a way to dismiss my pain. Why would this time be any different? Still, I can't shake the nagging question. Am I the villain here? Could I have swallowed my pride and gone for the sake of keeping the peace? Would it really have been so terrible to sit quietly in the back, let them have their moment, and leave before the reception? But then I remember the weight I carried in the days leading up to the wedding. The sleepless nights, the tightness in my chest, the sick feeling in my stomach every time I pictured them at the altar. Showing up would have been a betrayal, not of them, but of myself. So, Reddit, I'm here asking for your honest opinion. Am I really as selfish and dramatic as my family says? Or was I right to draw this line, even if it means standing alone?